Tonight on 60 Minutes.
September 11, 2001. The Twin Towers catastrophe, the world's worst nightmare.
One of the most cowardly acts the world's ever been witness to.
The same city, 6 months later.
People all of a sudden like New Yorkers because, look, we took the hit for everybody.
People were screaming, "Don't look up."
Harrowing stories you'll never forget.
That's part of a person. I think that's a torso.
Survivors now revealing what really happened.
I had never spoken to anyone.
In that cowardly terrorist attack.
Just tired of crying.
Tired of crying?
6 months tomorrow since the devastating attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. Those tragic events are still so raw, the consequences so great, it will inevitably be years before we can gain any real perspective. Since September 11, we've gone to war in Afghanistan. We may soon be at war with Iraq, and all the while the massive clean-up has continued in New York. 6 months ago, Tara Brown was one of the first journalists allowed into that shattered city. This week, she returns.
New York will always be one of the world's great cities, and sadly, for that very reason, one of the world's great targets. Have a look at this skyline. It really is spectacular. But what makes it remarkable now is what you don't see. Towering above all these other skyscrapers in that space just over there.
At 8:48, the first plane hit Tower 1. 18 minutes later, at 9:06, the second plane crashed into Tower 2.
Oh my God! Jesus Christ!
One minute before 10 o'clock, Tower 2 collapsed.
Oh my God, there it goes!
Half an hour after that, Tower 1 followed. These are the indelible images of September 11. But one snapshot of one face seemed to capture all the horror and disbelief. Her name is Marcy Borders. Do you remember that photo being taken?
No, I don't remember where I was, what building, or what was I saying, like, I don't...
Do you remember what you were feeling at that point?
I just didn't want to die.
Marcy worked on the 81st floor of Tower 1. She got out just as the other tower started to collapse.
I was running with a million people, but when I got caught, it was like I was by myself. I'm like, where is everybody? I mean, not a soul was near me. I'm like, where's the whole world? Like, I don't know. I just started screaming.
6 months later, Marcy no longer goes to work. She seldom leaves her house. Like many other New Yorkers, she's a wreck. How many other people who were in the World Trade Center are suffering the way you are, do you think?
I have never spoken to anyone or seen anyone since that day, so I don't know.
Looks like you've been doing a lot of crying.
Just tired of crying.
You're tired of crying? In New York, there are still many memorials to the missing, including those from Australia.
Well, it's nice to be, it certainly feels a lot smaller than New York, but it's very nice to be home.
Australian James Dorney's office was on level 92 of Tower 2. He was one of the lucky ones. 60 people on his floor and over 200 people in his firm perished.
my floor was particularly hard hit because it was right in our line of vision. And these pictures here happened right in front of my very eyes, and you're just helpless, really. That's why I thought, well, stairs are probably my best bet, and it turned out that they were. And when we came out, people were screaming, "Don't look up, just make your way." But I could hear the thuds of large objects hitting the pavement. Now, I presume that they were people jumping, but I didn't need to be told twice not to look up, because I'd already seen enough that day to fill my memory for some time to come. I'd seen enough. I wanted to get out of there.
A month after the attack, James packed up and left New York, which had been his home for 3 years, and returned to Australia. He doesn't know yet when he'll be able to go back to work or back to New York.
I felt that upset and that on edge about the whole thing. Every time there was a bang in the street or a siren went off, I'd jump a mile. And of course I think, why? It's just one of the most cowardly and stupid, pointless acts that I think the world's ever been witness to.
What can you not do now that you used to be able to do?
Everything. Go to malls, just, I don't know, just deal with the public. I used to do everything. I don't do much of anything now.
And why can't you do that?
I don't know, because I don't know who my enemy is. Like, they haven't even come up with Osama bin Laden, so, like, I don't know who has the bomb in his shoe or who just got up this morning to kill.
Incredibly, Marcy still has the clothes she wore to work on September 11, untouched since that day.
This shirt is actually gaining its color back because it was white.
I know. I thought you were wearing a white outfit that day to work.
And this scarf was white too, but it's, I guess, sitting in the bag and just over time, you know, coming back to life as well.
What does it smell like?
It's just, I don't want to get anthrax or anything. I'm nervous for holding it too long.
Today, Ground Zero looks more like a construction site than a disaster zone, but the sobering reality is that it also remains a tomb. Spare a thought too for the workers. The search goes on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for 6 months. Despite that massive effort, of the 3,000 people who perished, only 500 have been identified. The search goes on.
Today there was a recovery of people down, of remains down at the site. We know that there's a ramp that we're using at the moment. We've just built a new temporary ramp and we'll take that away. We know that there'll be more remains underneath that.
Simon Hickey works for the Australian firm Bovis Lend-Lease. It was one of the first construction companies called in to coordinate the billion-dollar clean-up of Ground Zero.
It became clear to us after a period of time that we weren't going to find survivors. But you have to adjust your thinking then and say, people need to go home. The remains of people need to go home. So it was then about getting the remains of people and giving them back to their families so they could have a proper funeral for them and they could respect the people that had lost their lives. Even now, 6 months on, they're still working round the clock down there. It's amazing. People get in at 7 a.m. in the morning and they work till midnight. They go home, catch a few hours of sleep and come back. And people are still very committed to being there and to getting that job done.
The World Trade Center site, it was going to take 2 years to clean it up. They did it in 6 months. All of the demolition is gone in 6 months. It's a record. Nobody could have believed it could have happened. This city is amazing.
If anyone encapsulates the swagger and bravado of the old New York, it's Donald Trump.
Well, I know so many cities, and I'm in a lot of cities. I'm involved with a lot of cities, but I will say from a sales pitch and from honesty, there is no city in the world like New York. And I know them all.
This billionaire entrepreneur and skyscraper owner says New York has come through its ordeal a stronger city.
I think New York is a better city than ever before. New York City has such spirit and such resilience. You know, the one thing that did come out of this is that people all of a sudden like New Yorkers. Because, look, we took the hit for everybody. It could have been in Australia, it could have been in Chicago, it could have been in Los Angeles, it could have been in London. It just happened to be in New York. And they've taken it, the New York folks have taken it with great dignity. And it's just, there's a spirit about the city that's been amazing. The spirit of people having to do with New York City, it's been absolutely amazing.
Was there any conscious decision on your part not to leave, that it was important to stay?
Yes, yeah, I think so, yes.
I first met Australian Adam Hopp in the days following the attack.
At times people were dry reaching and we had a lot of smoke, and it was either smoke and or dust in the stairwell. So, you know, how do you keep it together? You just do, I guess.
Adam worked on level 73 of Tower 1. His wife Karen worked on the floor below. Both survived, and both decided to remain in the city they love.
If everyone said, well, I'm up and out of here, well, then we are, the New Yorkers, and are losing. The terrorists win because they've freaked us out, and now they're ruining one of the best cities in the world. They attempted to, but if by people staying and getting on, as I keep saying, they don't win. And we show that Americans and all the other people who live here aren't defeated.
There's a new mayor of New York now, filling the big shoes of Rudy Giuliani, but the message from Michael Bloomberg is just the same. You took over the reins of a city wounded. How has it started to heal?
Well, part of it was wounded, and we lost 3,000 of our friends and relatives and 400 firefighters and police officers. But the most important thing is that some people that tried to destroy our ways of life have failed. People that believe others have a right to practice their religion, to say what they want, to raise their families, to go about their business. Those are the victors in this, and we're not going to let a few terrorists take any of that away from us.
So they didn't win?
They didn't win, and they will not, nor will any others.
I don't think I'll ever come to terms with it. There's no rhyme or reason for who got out that day and who didn't get out. In a sense, I sort of draw some inspiration from all the wonderful friends that I lost that day and their memory. And that inspires me to stay strong and live a good life because that's exactly what they'd be doing if they were here. And I think that everybody there that day is sort of driven by similar motives to keep going in honour of those people who we lost that day.